The financial situations in a lot of countries are right now not very good. But interestingly, the financial situation in Europe is not bad for the same reason as in other countries like America, because they have a different problem too. So I don't want to go into detail why it happened in America. So maybe I'll do that another time, but that's not what I'm here to talk about now. In Europe, the reason why some of the countries aren't going too well is simply because they can't control how much the businesses are investing, because the base interest rate is controlled by the European Union. So the base interest rate is the interest rate that the central banks in the countries define, which controls the interest rate that the public banks give out. So if a country has a strong economy, it would be good to ensure that businesses are investing a lot of money, because a lot of money can be borrowed, because the strong economy can back up, money being used by businesses. So then the country can lower the base interest rate, or the government can lower the base interest rate, which means that businesses can borrow money for less than if for a higher interest rate. So the way that a company can acquire money is either by selling their stocks, but that is a one-off sort of thing, because once you've sold your stock, you can't acquire it back unless you buy it back, which involves spending money. And the other way is by borrowing money from the bank. So obviously, if the bank offers a lower interest, more businesses are going to invest more money. But if it has a higher interest, then the companies aren't going to invest as much money because it's more expensive. If a country has a good GDP ratio, which is basically the ratio of how much exports they do compared to imports, the way the GDP ratio is calculated is you subtract the imports from the exports. The more you export, the better your export ratio is. The export ratio, the GDP ratio, usually drops a lot if the country runs into financial trouble. But the GDP ratio of financially strong countries still usually fluctuates in a positive and negative over years. However, the more time it spends being positive, the stronger the economy of the country is. If a country exports more than they import, obviously they have a strong economy, because the amount of money in the country is constantly increasing, which ensures a growing wealth in the country. So in Europe, the base interest rate is controlled by the European Union. So normally a country has control over its own base interest rate, and in times of weak economy, they can reduce the amount of money that the country spends by increasing the base interest rate. However, in Europe, the individual countries can't do that, because it's controlled by the European Union, and the European Union has the best interest of Europe as a whole, rather than having the best interest in mind of the weakest economy. So in Greece, what happened was that the companies in Greece were, still investing money, even though the country's economy couldn't support that amount of investment because of the weak economy. So the finances in Greece then didn't work out as they should, and now they have to live off other countries' success. There are a number of solutions to this problem, which essentially is either that Greece lowers its standard of living, which obviously the Greece aren't going to want to do, because who wants to lower their standard of living if they've had better. But or the other way is that the Greece is not in the Euro, or gets kicked out of the European Union, but that would not be desirable for countries that have invested in Greece or have given money to Greece, because then they wouldn't ever get their money back, because their debt would be settled. So it's really a very complicated problem. The reason I want to talk about this is because I find the idea or what comes from cyber attacks quite scary, simply because everything we do, everything that is electronic, or most things we do, have software